Hi everybody and welcome to my fly tying tutorial. The pattern that I'm tying today is the ginger snap. This is a Czech style nymph that was created by Kevin Compton. He is the owner of performanceflies.com. If you have yet to check out this website, I highly encourage you to do so. In the fly tying world, myself included, it's great to just go out and find materials and bring them into this game and integrate them into your flies. But whenever it comes to just high-end materials, that's what Kevin really seems to stock at performanceflies.com. They're just really quality materials, which is why I tend to use them in my fly tying videos and in my personal fly tying. So whenever we jump from, we'll jump from the website into this actual pattern. Kevin is really big into the Czech style nymphing, as you'll notice on his website. And this is one of the flies that really takes part in that game. It's going to be tied on a jig style hook, which basically means that it rides inverted. It has a lot of weight to it, a lot of weight at the head of the fly. And then when we get into the nuances of this pattern, there's a bunch of little steps that, as a beginner, you might look at them and say, gosh, these are really intermediate or advanced steps. And I will give you that. There are some intermediate steps that are involved in this pattern. But if you are stuck with any of these individual steps, my advice is watch me tie it a few times on the video, take a bare hook and just tie that one step on a hook with maybe a material that you think lesser of, just so you can get into the practice of tying that one step. For instance, whenever you're tying in, we'll say peacock quills that are already stripped, that can be quite tricky. So my advice is don't just go for it on your first try. Maybe grab some peacock quills, strip them, and then just take your time and practice tying them in. Tie them in with the dark side to the right, the dark side to the left, and just see how it looks on your fly. And then you can start to get an idea of why we are tying them in the way that we're tying them for this pattern. At the very end of it, I'm going to be using this dubbing tool. I'll talk a little bit more about this that Kevin has one of his friends create and he sells them. It's a really neat little tool that is just quick for tying in a dubbing loop. And if that's something you have yet to do, I really recommend doing that because it's just a great little trick that you can put on a lot of your patterns, a lot of your nymphs, and really just have them stand out as opposed to the other flies that are being fished today. So without any further ado, let me get into the materials. I'll list the materials up on this screen so you can see exactly what materials I'm using to tie this with. Then I will jump into the actual tutorial. Okay, let's start tying Kevin Compton's ginger snap. Let me go over some of these materials for starters. I'll zoom out so you can see everything. I have a competition style hook. It's the brand is Hanak. It's spelled H-A-N-A-K. It's the H450BL, which is barbless. It's a jig style hook. We're tying this today in a size 12, but Kevin recommends tying this the whole way down to a size 16. The one thing that you have to keep in mind with the jig style nymphs, or these hooks anyway, is that as opposed to a traditional hook, they come down at a relatively aggressive bend, a relatively aggressive angle near the eye. Plus the eye is twisted a little bit. By doing that, it's going to allow this hook to ride point up while it's in the water, which is a really great thing because then your point's riding up and you don't have to worry about it snagging anything. So these are very popular in the Czech style nymphing world. All right, next we have this disco slotted silver bead on it. This is a tungsten bead. It's size 1/8 or 3.5 millimeters. So it's that silver one. And what's really neat about these beads is that they're drilled differently on both ends. Let me give you a quick zoom in on them and I'll explain how they're drilled differently and why. So on one end you have just the regular hole. I'll try to show you that. So there's just a regular hole. You'll put that in over the hook point. But before you can allow that bead to go around the bend of the hook, then you have this other side, which is the slotted side. Hopefully you can see that a little bit better than me. So it's basically just like an enlarged slot, and what that does, it allows it to go around this hook bend. The neat thing is, depending on how you have that slot, if you notice I'm pushing it, it won't go down to the eye of the hook. But if I push this back a little bit, invert it, and now push it down, it can go straight down. So that slot allows that bead to get over the bend at the front and also down around that 90-degree angle. That's going to create a lot of weight near the head of the fly, which is exactly what you want. All right, let's get some of the other materials tied on. I'm going to be using just a real fine diameter dark brown tying thread. Let me get a couple of wraps on there. Okay, I'm going to advance this back. And for my tail, you can either use spade hackle or some coque de lion. Here's just a quick example. They're very fine fibers. I'm going to use a ginger color. You only need approximately 3 or 4 fibers. So just pull 3 or 4 fibers off. Make sure their tips are all aligned. Once they are, you want to place it over your hook. Ensure that it's approximately on the length of one body. I always recommend locking them in place, but don't lock them in with a very firm wrap. Put them in with a relatively, we'll say, loose wrap. That way you can look at it, say, well, is it a little too short? Is it a little too long? In my case, mine were just a hair short, so then I could just grab them, lengthen them just a hair, and then wrap back, locking them in place. Okay, once we have our tail in place, we're going to put one of my favorite materials currently at the rear of the hook. So this is glo-brite. The color is number 1. It's just a neon fluorescent pink color. This glo-brite floss, you've probably seen this quite a bit in the recent year or the recent couple of years. A lot of tires are using this stuff now as a hot spot. It really just glows in the water. It's a great looking floss. Most tires will tie it near the wing case or near the head of the fly, and it will give your tractor fly just that little extra pop that will just kind of give the fish a reason to take it. What Kevin's chosen to do, though, instead of making this a hot spot near the front of the fly, he recommends tying this in as a tag near the back of the fly. For traditional salmon tires, they'll know exactly, or salmon fly tires, they'll know exactly what I mean whenever I'm talking about a tag. But basically a tag is just going to take place, it's just 3 or 4 wraps near the end of the hook. So I'm just going to let that butt end go forward. I'm going to lock this in place with just a few wraps, and then wrap forward once. And then to place this tag on, I am literally going to make approximately 4 turns and no more. And that's it. And then just ensure that you have it locked in. And then I'm going to kind of take care of the body right now quickly. I'm going to make it so all these tag ends of all this, of my tail and of that glo-brite are all approximately the same length. I would normally make the trim all at the same time, but for your sake, what I mean by that is I want them all approximately at that length right there. Thus, they'll help me kind of taper out my body. So I'm just going to pinch these down with my thumb and just kind of grab them, get them all in place, and then wrap back. Okay, I'm going to stop just before I get the whole way back. I'm going to put on my ribbing. Let me put this on, then I'll talk to you briefly about it. We're going to be using just a brown, very thin wire ribbing. This is extremely thin. You can definitely cut this with your tying scissors. Tim Abbott, if you're watching this, yes, I did say that. You can use your tying scissors for this one. All right, I'm going to lock this in and wrap back just a little bit more. I'll talk briefly about this wire. This wire is not something that we necessarily recommend for this pattern. Can you have it? Yes. Do you need it? No. Because we're going to be using Peacock quill, there is a little bit of, we'll say, it basically will already show some ribbing in that ginger quill. But this will add a little bit of support to the fly. It'll add a little bit of weight to the fly. If you don't want it, but you still want to support your Peacock quill, then just get a very fine diameter tippet and use that to rivet. You can counter rivet, and that will really help to ensure that nothing happens to your Peacock quill. Now I'm going to be tying this pattern today with a little bit of head cement under my quill, so this could be possibly overkill, but I like the notion of ribbing all of my nymphs. If you've looked at any nymphs, they typically have a very strong rib, and I want to leave that in this pattern. All right, next though, I'm going to tie in my body. So we're going to be using these hand-stripped Peacock quills, ginger color, hence the name, the ginger snap, for this pattern. What's nice about these is that they are already stripped for you. So all that hurl is gone. I'm going to just pull one out. I want to get one that has a lot of ginger color to it. So you can be a little bit picky whenever you're pulling these out. All right, I have one pulled out. What's nice is that for the most part, it is already stripped. The hurl, for the most part, is gone. If it's not, and there's just a little bit more there and you don't want it, you can either dip it in some type of a solution. There, you can just Google that. There are solutions out there. It's a relatively easy solution. Or if you pull it back and you see that there's still quite a bit there, you can grab just a little tool that you should have close by, which I do. And it's the eraser on a pencil. And then I'm just going to simply put this on a flat surface. And I'm going to take the eraser and I'm just going to erase down towards the butt of this feather. And it will take all of that hurl right off. I'm going to leave some on near the tip so I can hold on to it, but I've just gotten rid of pretty much all the other herl that I don't want. Now let me be honest with you with these this material. For the most part, this Peacock material that comes in these packages, you really won't need to do that. So that little tip right there is just showing you in case you ever want to take your own Peacock herl off, or if there is a little bit on near the tip that you want eradicated from it. All right, next let's get this tied on. And the way that I'm going to tie this on, I want to ensure that the dark side is facing the eye of the hook, because I want to get as much of that ginger color showing as possible. So I'm going to tie it on by the butt section, which I will be building up the back of this fly by putting so many things back there. I'm going to ensure that the dark section's to the right, so whenever I wrap, I will be getting a little bit of that in there. And in fact, I'm looking at it right now, and it is looking fine. Then I just want to get that out of there. I'm going to get some of these other fibers trapped and pushed down. All right, but the one that now I get to the point where, if you notice, my body has a lot of fibers, a lot of materials trapped back here, and not so many up here. So I have to build up the diameter, create just a very fine taper in this. This is also a good chance for you to build up a little ramp to that tungsten bead to ensure that it gets locked into place. So I'm just going to look at this from an angle so I can exactly see how it's being built up. You will not need much thread, trust me here. Okay, and that is all I'm going to need. When I push my bead, it's not going to move, so I know I have all that stuff locked into place as well. All right, well, next time I put my Peacock quill on, I want to wrap it, but before I do, I may grab a little bit of fly tying cement. I'm using fly-tite. It's made by fly-rite. I'm just going to dip my needle into it, get a little bit of cement on my needle. I'm going to start from the eye of the hook, basically, and go back, and just place some cement over all those wraps. I am not cementing those wraps into place. What I'm doing is I'm leaving that head cement there, so whenever I wrap that Peacock quill will be supported by this head cement. Thus, it will be less susceptible to snapping whenever you're banging this fly against things or getting it in between the teeth of fish. Hopefully the latter versus the former. All right, well, now I have my head cement there. I can start wrapping my quill. I'm going to try to keep my wraps close together. The closer together they are, the more of that ginger color you'll see. You want to see a lot of that ginger color. Don't worry about the ribbing. If you're trying to use that Peacock for the ribbing, you don't need to worry about that because you're going to have that brown wire that's going to be trailing it. Okay, I'm getting close to the eye. That's going to be my last wrap, so I'm just going to hold this up, lock into place with my thread. That's it. Next, I'm going to bring my ribbing forward, and I'm going to try to just mimic my wraps from before. So I basically am trying to put this ribbing directly over those brown spots, or the brown ribbing that was previously created by me bringing that Peacock quill forward. Because I really don't want to get this brown wire over the ginger colored spots, because that will really eliminate all of the ginger to it. So I'm just going to make a couple wraps up here, get these two tag ends out of there, try to trim them with the tips of your scissors. Okay, and finally we're going to get to the last part of this fly, and this is really the cool part, the part that I enjoy kind of the most. We're going to be using this great dubbing loop tool that Kevin had one of his buddies create. It's very heavy. It's just got a little round spot that you can put around the thread, and this is going to look different than most tools that you may have used before in terms of a dubbing loop. And we're going to use it just a little bit differently than you may have used it before. So I'm just going to wrap back just a little bit, not too far. If you see your wire or anything sticking up, don't worry too much about it. I might put this tool around my thread, and I might create just, we'll say, I guess I'll extend this for the sake of the video. So I have a lot of thread coming out. I might place one wrap in front of it, one behind, and then one more back in front. And let me zoom out so you can see exactly what's going to go on here. So I have this tool coming straight back towards me. I have this loop that I've created. I'm going to pull up one side. I'm going to be placing my material in there. Speaking of the material, we have this Peacock dubbing. It's Peacock bronze. All right, it's from the Simon LTD. It's basically a Czech Republic style dubbing. But whenever you pull it out, the fibers are really long. So I chop them up really finely. So I have a whole pile, I'll just hold it up to you right now, of very finely chopped fibers. The reason I chop them up so fine is because whenever you place them in this tool and then you spin, you do want some lengthy fibers, but you don't want them so lengthy that they're covering up the body. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to let this dangle, and I'm going to kind of hold it up, hold the two loops up with my finger, and I might create a little gap inside them. I may reach over with my right hand, and I might grab some of this dubbing, and I place it in between those two, my two thread pieces in the loop basically, and I want to push it up as far as possible close to that hook. I do this approximately 3 times. I'm just going to pinch them shut, and then I'm going to zoom back in so you can see what I'm doing here, because this is kind of an important part. So I have some dubbing in there right now. If you have too much, you can literally just take it, pull some out of there. Again, I want to keep it more towards that fly. But what's neat about this tool is that now I have it, both loops are coming around my finger, and this tool's going straight down at a 90-degree angle. What's neat about that is that here's my thread. It's way over here. It's in the front, even though it's tough for you to see that with the spatial awareness that this camera is not giving. My thread's closer to the front, and if I come back about 4 inches, that's where my finger is, and going down at a straight 90-degree angle is that dubbing loop tool. So now I'm just going to simply grab it and spin it. I'll zoom in so you can see what's going to be happening with the material. There's one spin, and here's my second. And with this one, it's going to start spinning that material. I can give it a couple more spins at the bottom, and there we go. Now my material's really looking the way I want it to. I give it a few more spins till I know all that material's trapped in there tightly. There it goes. I don't want to give it overkill or anything. Once I have that material in there, I just like to take my fingernail, get all those loose particles out of there. I may wrap it around once the whole way. I may stop. I'm going to take my thread. I'm going to make one wrap in front of all that stuff. What that does, it'll just help to push those fibers back. Now I might take my finger, I might keep pulling those fibers back as I make my second wrap. And then do the same thing. Place one thread wrap in front of it. And now this is my third. This will be my final wrap. So I can literally just go straight over it. Place a couple wraps over it, locking that dubbing loop in place. I might pull my dubbing loop back, place one wrap in front of it, grab my scissors, and trim away the dubbing loop. All right, now this is the point where I'm going to finish the fly, and then I'll show you a few things. I'm just going to take that back, place a couple wraps, get a quick half hitch in there. Everything's locked into place. I don't have to worry about it going anywhere. So if you look at it, you can say, well, I got a couple long fibers in there. If you don't want those long fibers in there, literally pull them out. They'll come straight out. I'm not going to worry about those. I pretty much have it exactly how I want it. I put in my half hitch. I'm going to make approximately 4 turns on this, and then lock it in place directly behind that bead and trim away my thread. If you want to put some head cement over that thread, by all means definitely do so. Alright, so here is a look at the finished ginger snap. So we have our Coq de Lion, or the spade hackle for the tail. We have a really nice tag made out of that glo-brite floss. We have that ginger colored peacock quill body, which is without a doubt, I would say, the most difficult part of this. And then we have our dubbing loop, which was really simple with that dubbing tool. You'll notice that these fibers are kind of jutting straight out. And Kevin really likes those fibers to come out. He doesn't want those to mat down against that body. He wants them to stay out, so it really gives that impression of those legs near the front. Now remember, this fly is going to be riding hook point up. So whenever it's in the water, it will be riding at this angle. When you're looking at your pattern, if you think, geez, I have too many fibers in there, pull some of those fibers out. If you think you have too many, get them out of there. If you think they're too long, you're more than welcome to trim them, because I trim them prior to even putting them in this. So this is a look, though, at the finished ginger snap fly. Let me give you the once-over on this fly. Definitely a great pattern to have in your box, especially for those of you who really like the Czech style nymph out there. If you don't, I recommend getting into that game and checking out more patterns like this. Well, thank you everybody for viewing this fly tying tutorial. I recommend you checking out Performance Flies. It's performanceflies.com. It's Kevin Compton's website. He just runs a great operation, has extremely high quality materials, as you probably noticed from this fly tying tutorial. Speaking of which, thank you for viewing this fly tying tutorial. If you have any questions or comments for me, you can leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcamisa@gmail.com. Thank you again, everybody.